Hello boys and girls, welcome to Mrs. Bandu's Math Movies. We are looking at Lesson 2-8 for Course 2, and we're going to be studying scientific notation. Our objective here is to write numbers in both scientific notation and standard form. Scientific notation is what we're going to focus on. Standard form is basically the way we already write the numbers. I already have this sheet filled out, so I'll read with you and try to move slowly enough that you can keep up. Please remember, if I start going too fast, that you can always pause until you catch up or until you are ready to move on. Okay, our vocab and key concepts is scientific notation. A number in scientific notation is written as the product of two factors. One greater than or equal to 1 and less than 10. And the other a power of 10. Okay, so here I have the number 7,500,000,000,000,000,000. Okay, that has a whole bunch of zeros and it's a very, very long number. What I can do, this would be considered standard form. In scientific notation, this can be shortened quite a bit to 7.5 as the first factor. Again, a factor greater than or equal to 1 but less than 10 times a second factor that is a power of 10. So 7.5 times 10 to the 12th is another name for 7,500,000,000,000, or another way of writing that very large number. And this is what we're going to practice, taking numbers in standard form, turning them to scientific notation. Also taking something in scientific notation and turning it back to standard form. It's really not that simple. It may sound a little complicated, but it is not. Okay. We have, if we want to write a number in scientific notation, this is what we do. The mean distance from Mars to the Sun is about 141,750,000 miles. Write this number in scientific notation. Okay, my first step is to move the decimal point. Let me make that just a bit larger so it might be a little bit easier to see. Is to move the decimal point to get a factor greater than 1 but less than 10. So what I do is, as my number is written, I'm going to take my decimal point and move it back until there is only one non-zero digit sitting in front of the decimal point. So that's pretty simple. Just one non-zero digit in front of the decimal point. Okay? So that's going to actually give me my first factor of 1.4175. I'm going to drop all those extra digits. Okay, now since this was 141,750,000 miles, this is really 1.4175 times 100 million. Okay, basically if I put a 1 and the rest of the numbers were zeros, or the rest of the digits were zeros, that gives me my second factor. Quite honestly, I usually do not do this step. I jump right to the next step, which is to write it as write 100,000 as the product of, 100 million as a power of 10. Okay, so I keep my first factor, 1.4175, and then this is 100 million which is a 1 followed by 8 zeros. So that gives me 10 to the 8th power. Also, I can get the exponent 8 by counting the number of digits I passed up along the way while I was moving my decimal point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That tells me the exponent that I should put on the power of 10. So the mean distance from Mars to the Sun is about 1.4175 times 10 to the 8th miles. Okay, so again, I now have a factor that is greater than 1 but less than 10. And I have a second factor that is a power of 10, and that's dependent on place value. And I can just count how many places I had to pass up when I was moving my decimal point to get my first factor. We will do some more of these in class. The main idea here is to get an idea of what we're going to be doing and where some of these numbers are coming from, and certainly we'll be practicing more of these in class. Here is a quick check question, which you may choose to do at this point if you want to pause the video, or you can come back and do it later. Okay, example number 2 has us taking a number and writing it then in standard form. Light from the sun reaches Earth in about 4.99012 times 10 to the second power seconds. We want to write this number in standard form. Again, remember, standard form is simply a regular number like we are used to using. And we have a couple of different methods here. Normally I use method number 2, but they're very similar. Okay. The first thing we do is we're going to write as the product of two factors. So my first factor is going to remain the same, 4.99012 times 10 to the second power. 10 to the second power I'm going to simplify to 100, because remember that means a 1 followed by 2 zeros, or 10 times 10, which is 100. Then I multiply my factors. Multiplying by 100, or 10 to the second power, moves my decimal point 2 places to the right. So I get 499.012. Okay, method number 2 is really the method that I use because it doesn't have quite as much writing to do, and it's pretty straightforward. In method number 2, we see that in scientific notation, the power of the exponent on the power of 10 is 2. So since the exponent is 2, we're going to move our decimal point 2 places to the right on the first factor. So when I bounce it 2 places to the right, it ends up after the 9 and before the 0. So light from the sun reaches the earth in about 499.012 seconds. Notice I got the same answer. And very similar methods. Method number 2 requires less figuring, and it's playing off the powers of 10, and the powers of 10 meaning that you're going to be multiplying by 10, 100, 1,000, and so on, which is moving the decimal place to the right. Again, we will practice some more of these in class. Before you do come to class, though, please have the 2 quick check questions answered, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.